Hi, this is Rob at Mount Baker Tiny Homes. Thanks for watching. So today we're installing this 125 amp sub panel into the tiny home behind us. And I just want to talk a little bit about how the sub panel works. I've watched myself several videos online about installing these, and I know that there's some questions I had that weren't addressed by them, so this video will maybe fill in the gaps with some of the other videos that are available for wiring your tiny home. Okay, so we're actually bringing in 50 watts from an RV style plug-in into this sub panel, and I'd want to explain the 4 wires that you find in the RV plug and how those connect to here. Okay, so a lot of you, I'm going to start from this because a lot of you are used to maybe just doing some house wiring, and maybe you plugged an outlet or sorry, you wired an outlet or something like that, and you know that there's 3 wires, right? So there's the hot wire, and then there's a neutral, and then there's the ground. So when you come to a panel, though, panels are actually designed to work with 220, and so you actually have 4 wires for a panel. And it's actually pretty easy to figure out where these go. In fact, you can see that there's 4 kind of large nuts here that will connect to 4 different wires. And so the way that works is on your 220 wire, which is coming from the RV plug, you have your ground. So that's just like on your house, on your home wiring, the three wire cable. That goes here to the neutral, and then, the ground, and then the neutral is the white one, and that's going to go over here, and I'll explain this a little bit better and how it all works out. And then you have 2 hot wires, so usually would have the black, but now you have black and red, and they're really just the same thing. It's 110 plus 110, and that's how you get to 220, right? So these 2 hots are going to go on these guys here, and then that's going to distribute the power out to each of your breakers that way. All right, let's look at the layout of the box. So what we really have here are 4 pieces of metal. And the first one is the box itself, which is the ground, because you'll see when you connect your wire to the ground nut, then it's actually connected to the box itself. So the whole box is ground. And then the next one is our neutral. And so the neutral connects to here, and as you can see, this metal goes all the way down to these rails, and these are the rails that the breakers connect to. Now, this is hard to tell, but there's some insulation over that same piece of metal here. So this rail and this rail, they're both neutral. They're both connected to here, right? And so are all these guys here. So this is all one thing, all right? And then we have our other 2 hot wires, as I had mentioned before, that are going to connect into here. Each one of those will be 110. And so this plate here connects to this 110 circuit, and this plate here connects to the other one. And these blades are actually alternating, and that's something that's hard to see. In fact, first time I looked at it, it took me forever to understand what was going on, and I was really confused. But if you actually follow the insulation around here, the plastic, you can see that these 2 are kind of intertwined, and that each alternating blade goes to a different circuit. So this one goes to here, this one goes to there, etc., etc. Okay, so as I mentioned before, we have our 4 wires coming into the panel, and just to review, the ground goes to ground, which is over there. This is the ground here, okay? And then the white goes to neutral, and then we have our 2 hots. We're going to hook up there, the red and the black. But after all that, we're actually not going to do it that way. And the reason is that this is a sub panel, and a sub panel doesn't have a main breaker. So you can't turn everything off from anywhere in this sub panel. The reason is that it's a sub panel, and it's actually, the idea of it is that it's fed from the main panel in your house from a breaker there. So if you wanted to turn this all off, and it was set up in a house, say a garage or a section of the house, then you would turn it off at the main panel. But we are using it for a slightly different application. We're putting it in a tiny home. Now, in a sense, you could actually think of the tiny home as a part of the electrical system of the house, right? So it is that way in a sense because it's just a plug. It's a 50 amp plug that comes out of some other electrical system. But for all practical purposes, we actually want to have a main breaker that turns the power off entirely for this panel that's in the house. It's just going to be safer and more convenient. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to install this 40 amp breaker in the panel, and then we're going to feed our hots into it, and that's going to become our on and off switch. So it's super easy. We're just going to first of all get it the right way, and then there it is. Okay, it's actually on. So now instead of running the hots to here, we're actually going to run them into here. They're just going to go straight into there. So black and red are going to there. And don't worry about it, can be red or black. It doesn't matter which way you go with that, right? Just the point is the black goes in there in one of them and the red goes in another one. And remember that these are alternating, right? These blades are alternating. So then that means that we now have connected to both of these from here. Just it's the exact same thing as connecting them to here. The only difference is we can now turn it on or off. So once we do that, now we have our switch, and then we can add our other breakers. And in this case, we can add 10 breakers if we need to. Again, this is why I mentioned before that you want to have actually more breakers available than you really need. So if you're working with a 8 breaker panel, then if you set it up this way, which is probably what you're going to have to do, then you're only going to end up with 6 because you have to add the on and off breaker. All right, so this has been Rob at Mount Baker Tiny Homes, and again, we've been talking about how to set up a 125 amp sub panel as the main panel in your tiny home based on a 50 amp plug-in, which is the RV style. So if you have any questions, hit us up in the comments, and you can also check us out at mountbakertinyhomes.com.